I'm going to call this meeting of the Primary and Secondary Education Committee to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Brunner.
Present.
Vice Chair Blessing. Here. Ranking Member Fetter. Here. Senator Huffman. Senator O'Brien.
Here.
Senator Rulli. Senator Sykes. Here.
We have a quorum. The minutes of the prior meeting are on our screens. Are there any objections, corrections, or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will be approved as written. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We are bringing forward amended House Bill 105 for its third hearing, and we're bringing invited testimony here from Erin Merryn and her son Jack, who are going to be here giving testimony today. We were trying to get this set up earlier, and she is driven in from Chicago to give testimony on this bill. So I know her husband's family lives here locally. So Erin, you may come on up and we'll get started.
Perfect.
Welcome to committee, and you may proceed when ready.
Thank you. I'm gonna set this right here. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. I drove in, as you heard, from Chicago, and it is my hope, hearing my message today, you'll see the importance of what I'm here to talk to you about. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused by the age of 18. There are over 90% of children being sexually abused by someone they know and trust. Yet, in school, at home, what do we talk about with children? Stranger danger. But as I mentioned, 90% of the time, it is someone the child knows and trusts. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I met my best friend in kindergarten. And it was at her house the very first overnight that I woke up to her uncle who lived in the home sexually abusing me. My parents, the school, never taught me you don't keep these secrets, you tell somebody. So I kept it a secret. I didn't tell anyone. Well, something to know about these predators, they don't stop if they're getting away with it. This man repeatedly sexually abused and raped me until the age of 8.5. I wasn't telling anyone. I was keeping this secret with my best friend because he was also abusing her. So how did my abuse end? No, it wasn't that police officer that had taught me for 3 years coming into the classroom about stranger danger. I wasn't learning safe and unsafe touch, safe and unsafe secrets, how to get away until today. No, we moved, and I got away from this monster. But I just moved that much closer to the next perpetrator in my life. This time, not that stranger, a family member. At age 11, 5th grade, I woke up to an older teenage cousin sexually abusing me. And for the next 1.5 years, repeatedly told me, this is our little secret, no one will believe you, Erin. If you tell anybody, you will destroy our family. So instead, I turned to my little pink childhood diary and started to keep my secrets in the back of the diary. Something happened last night, but I don't know who to tell. And word after word, page after page, I described the things my cousin was making me keep a secret. Continuing to threaten me, suddenly it's happening at all the family gatherings while I babysat his 2 younger brothers. So how did that abuse end? Well, as I mentioned, if these perpetrators are doing it to one person, as you hear, they're often doing it to more than one. And my 11-year-old sister blurted out the words one day, "Brian's gross." Well, that was that older teenage cousin. So I knew in that moment we had to tell somebody. So we told our parents, as you can imagine with any parent, they were devastated. As my older sister said, I just can't see him doing this. You see, what they teach you in school about stranger danger, they show you that video of the man with the missing teeth, the greasy hair, looks like he's homeless in the rusty car trying to lure the kids with the candy, or walking up the sidewalk with the leash. But often the people that are abusing kids are not only ones that they know, but upstanding citizens. We got people that work in high-profile jobs, firemen, teachers, youth pastors. I could go on and on. So often, that family member. In my case, also, the neighbor. But not that stranger I had now been taught about for 6 years by the same police officer. And the same time I am finding out my sister's being sexually abused by our cousin, I got that cop teaching us DARE. I still have my DARE card, and you flip it over, it teaches you the 8 ways on how to say no to drugs. I knew the consequences of what drugs do, so I never so much as put a cigarette or was an underage drinker. But where were the 8 ways teaching us on how to get away until today? It never came. And unfortunately, it took finding out my little sister was being abused for my abuse to end. I ended up moving forward with my life, going down a very destructive path, depression, suicide attempt, eating disorders, you name it, because that's something so often that happens to victims. Others attempt different forms of suicide, don't even survive. Turn to prostitution, drug abuse, because so often people that are being abused do not report it until they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, because nobody ever gave them the message on how to speak up and tell. The shame that they carry, the fear of not being believed. So after getting my master's in social work, I quit my full-time master level job as a youth and family counselor, making it my mission to pass Erin's Law in my home state of Illinois, requiring that we teach kids once a year on personal body safety education. Teaching kids the differences between safe and unsafe touch, safe and unsafe secrets, how to report this to a safe adult, and to keep reporting it if your abuse does not end. It's as simple as that. 1 hour out of a school year. We teach kids bully intervention, internet safety, as I mentioned there, stranger danger. This is just one more key component we should be teaching kids. I passed Erin's Law in my home state in 2013, and since then, over a decade now, have traveled to more than half the country testifying to legislators to pass this law. As far away as Alaska and Hawaii, and I could tell you today, 37 states have now passed it. Ohio is one of 13 that has not. This is my 3rd time testifying here. 7 years ago, I came and testified before committee in the House, where it passed, and I've been coming back year after year, testifying over Zoom, trying to get Ohio to be the next state, especially because my husband grew up here in the suburbs. Nothing more passionate about getting it passed in my home state in his state. He's even trying to convince me to move here, and I told him I will not live in a state that does not teach this law. So it is my hope today, hearing my message, that you will see the importance of how, had I been educated as a young child, I would have spoken up and told. I am somebody that will not give up on this law as long as it takes me to get it passed in all 50 states. And one final example I will give you is it took me 8 years going back and forth to the state of New York to pass this law, going to the national media, telling these legislators year after year, one day I will bring you the proof of why it was so important for me to get this law passed in New York. It finally passed in 2019 after a lot of challenges I faced, but not giving up. And a year into the first year of having it be taught, a children's advocacy center went in, prevention educator in an elementary school in upstate New York, teaching Erin's Law. Well, just in that 1 hour, 9 kids in that school came forward saying they're being sexually abused. And these 9 kids were all pointing their finger at the same man, not the stranger, but the principal. The principal had been abusing these kids in his office during his what they called lunch buddy program. This went on for 17 years to multiple children. This has hit the national news, and that number from 9 kids that one day has now exceeded more than 30 kids going back 18 years being abused by a principal. This is just one example how 1 hour of education made the difference of more children being abused and stopping this predator who's behind bars. So it is my hope that you will see what the difference this law can make for the children in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin, for your testimony. Are there any questions from committee members? Ranking Member Fetter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing the opportunity to hear Erin's story and her compassionate not just speech, but imploring what morally needs to be done to save our children. Because as someone who's worked on human trafficking for 17 years, many of the victims come from foster care that have already been sexually abused. Many of the victims that perpetrators go after and pimps go after are children they know the signs of being sexually abused. So therefore, they're sitting ducks to be sold to be raped commercially, which is even worse. So I've been trying to aim at getting to the root of the problem on so many victims of human trafficking being entrapped, and they're told the same kind of things. Don't tell, you're going to be in trouble, we're going to threaten your pet, your family, it goes on and on, we're going to drug you. But it starts oftentimes from someone who's been sexually abused as a child and broken and their life taken away. Well, in the state of Ohio, I don't know if you're aware, we're the only state that does not have health education standards, particularly because of the area
Ranking member,
of-
do you have a question?
Absolutely, because of,
Will you get to it?
I will absolutely get to it, it's important, I've been waiting a long time to speak with her. Because of sex education. And so this is in the realm of sex education, what you're talking about. Have you had other instances where states have resisted teaching this very important aspect to our young people so they can yell and tell and be told it's okay to yell and tell when someone is sexually abusing them?
There has been a little bit of confusion in some states that I clear up very quickly, that this is not sex education. This is its own component, something completely separate, teaching kids safe and unsafe touch through age-appropriate curriculum and not having anything to do with the birds and bees of what we're teaching other kids, that whole other component. And that has been brought up in New York, Arizona, and I believe one other state where that has been discussed, but very quickly been told that, this is something, a completely separate issue. The biggest obstacle I run into in other states is legislators saying they don't want to tell schools what to do. But once they hear me testify and they see the importance and all of the stories I bring them of what is happening in all these other states, in the news reporting of kids in multiple different districts coming forward because of this being taught that one time, it is moving through.
And my final question is a follow-up.
Follow-up.
Thank you. You mentioned that you were taught stranger danger. I was taught that. We were all taught the stranger danger in the topic of sexual abuse. Are we aiming in the wrong direction in this country and in this state by deflecting who the real danger is coming from? Are we ignoring the signs that are there for us to teach the correct danger of being sexually abused?
Well, yes, and what I often try to get across to people is educating our educators on the warning signs to look for of a child when we're teaching this in the schools, because we don't want just to put the responsibility on the child. We want the educators to know the signs to look for. I was displaying all the signs. I went as far as to put my hand through a window. I've got the individual education plan of a kid labeled behaviorally and emotionally disturbed. They put goals in place saying Erin will find 3 proper ways of dealing with her anger. But no one was getting to the root of why I was having all of these behavior problems. They tried blaming it on something else. So I think, what's far more important is we know parents are having the stranger danger discussion because that's their fear. The man walking past the bus stop talking to their kids. So if we can't get parents to be talking about this, the one other place kids spend most of their time is in school.
So in other words, you were never asked what happened to you as to why you were so angry?
No, never. And my parents brought it up with the educators and the school social workers and psychologists, saying, why is, she having so many behavior problems? Well, they blamed it on things like my dad moved out, they were splitting up. So they said I was acting out behavior. I was learning from my older sister and behaving this way and having these behavior problems. Not getting to the root of why. And another perfect example I can give you is a mom who did talk to her kids about personal body safety. She did have these conversations. She feared signing the slip that allowed her children to hear the Erin's Law, because I am completely okay with parents having the ability to opt out their child, because who has the first rights and only rights? It is parents. There are things I will opt my own children out in public education. We can't take that away. They are the ones that make decisions for their kids. So this mom was in a situation where she could have signed that form to opt her child out. She went back and forth, talked to the principal to understand what exactly is being taught. She wanted some clarification. Well, she's writing this letter to me because the night before it was to be taught, she didn't sign that form and let her first grader be taught it. And you know what she said to me? Erin, I had talked to my kids about this. I assumed she would come to me. But she had so much fear and threats given to her by her grandfather, my dad, that she didn't even have the courage to come to me because she was afraid that something bad would happen to me because of the threat she was told. And it took an outside source, that educator, the teacher, or the prevention education program that came in and taught these kids to give my daughter finally the courage. And she ended her letter saying, I was this close to signing that form to not allow my daughter to sit and to listen to what your law teaches and how many more years she could have been abused and threatened by her grandfather. A perfect example of, yes, even the parents that are talking to their kids about this, there's so much fear and threats put to children that they might just get that courage from another safe adult in their life telling them, you don't keep this a secret.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator O'Brien.
Thank you very much for your passionate testimony. Okay, I was a teacher in Ohio, and I had a totally different experience. I was taught at Bowling Green the curriculum, how to recognize sexual abuse. As a classroom teacher, I had a fellow teacher who did have a student come to her with an abusive situation. She came to some fellow teachers, talked to us. We told her she needed to report it. She not only reported it to the assistant principal and the principal, but she even took it higher to Children's Services. Rather quickly, that child was placed in foster care. So my situation here in looking at this, I'm sorry for what happened to you. There is evil in the world, and there will always be evil. I'm concerned about removing the innocence of our young children. I'm very concerned about that. So my question to you is, do you know who's going to develop or have a say in this curriculum? Will it be Planned Parenthood or any of their subsidiaries?
So my hope and what I've said is I will not support anyone teaching this curriculum, including Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood tried to, in New York, attach their own agenda bill they were trying to get passed, but they couldn't get passed, to my Erin's Law bill, and I said, absolutely not. I will not support this bill if they try to attach any of their own agenda of what they were trying to get passed. And so it is my goal, what I want to see done with this bill is this is taught specifically by a school social worker, psychologist that is already in the school, because research shows it's better, I studied this for 10 months in Illinois, that it's better to have somebody in the school teaching kids this, identifying this, training our educators, the social worker, psychologist, I was a school social worker, training them to identify the warning signs. Because say that child that isn't being abused in September, that learned this, suddenly is being abused in January, they see that person that taught them this in the halls. They know that person that they can identify with to go to, and report this. Where that outside source that is coming in, that's not someone they see consistently. But a lot of the states I've been working with, it is the children's advocacy centers who see these kids immediately after disclosing their abuse for the interview, for the whole arrest when a perpetrator is arrested, the interview used to proceed forward getting justice for these kids. And it is through those prevention educators that I am working with that ensures that these kids are getting the education. So I wouldn't support a bill if they were having Planned Parenthood come in and teach this. I want it either in-house or working directly with children's advocacy centers.
Follow up?
I know there may be an option to have parents opt out of the curriculum, but with my experience in lower income disadvantaged students, many students live in homes where whomever they're living with doesn't really have the time or expend the effort to look at curriculum going on in their school district. And again, I'm very concerned about possibly grooming or the losing the innocence of our young children. I'm terribly concerned about that. But thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. And I can see where your concerns are. And as I've said, people have brought concerns to me that the whole opt-out portion, well, what if that's the abuser in the home preventing the kid from getting the education? But as I have always said, I would rather be able to reach a majority of Ohio kids than miss those, few thousand that parents wanted to opt their kids out of, than miss an entire huge millions of students that could have gotten this education. And something else they point out is often that child that may miss how to be taught how to speak up and tell, often these kids that are being abused will tell their best friend, but not an adult. And that best friend sat through the program and will go and report it to a teacher because they were informed on how to speak up and tell.
All right. Any other questions from committee members? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing the information with us. Certainly appreciate it. Regardless of the outcome, we thank you for your diligence, particularly as long as you've been working on this particular issue. But what I wanted to say is that child is so well behaved. I congratulate you on that too as well.
Thank you. I've taken all 4 of my kids to state capitals testifying. And what's really interesting is in Washington State, the bill died for 3 years. My 4th time, I took my 9-month-old, it passed. In New York, it died for 8 years. On that 8th year, I took my 5-month-old, it passed. Oklahoma and Colorado in 1 year, took my same daughter to both those states, it passed. So I call my babies my good luck charms. 3rd time the charm testifying to Ohio legislators. I'm hoping you guys do the right thing and pass this. I really hate for you guys to be the last state.
All right. Thank you for those questions. So my question to you, Erin, and thank you again for coming. You're fine with transparency of the curriculum. You're fine with it being done inside the schools themselves. Mm-hmm. You're fine with the parental opt-out. And you're fine also with, trying to protect the privacy of the students themselves and following all federal laws and all that.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. All right. Well, I have no other questions. I do thank you. This took us a little while to get you here, and I do appreciate your coming to give testimony today. So thank you again for your time. Thank you to Jack for his being here as well. So appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, as this was invited testimony, this will conclude the 3rd hearing of amended House Bill number 105. Is there anything else to come before the committee? Seeing none, committee is adjourned.